Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Meepleville Meets. Today, we've got one of the kind of hottest sort of content creation groups on the scene these days in the gaming industry. We have the editor of that group, AnnaMaria Jackson Phelps. Hello, Anna.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. How you doing today? And then I did say it right, the Girls Game Shelf, not Game
Yes.
Shelf. Girls Game Shelf. I'm
Girls
sorry.
Game Shelf. Mhm.
Girls Game Shelf, yes. No, it's fantastic to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. So real quick, the Girls Game Shelf, if you could just maybe give us like a quick minute or two sort of description, USP, elevator pitch or whatever of the general message, theme or whatever of the Girls Game Shelf.
So Girls Game Shelf is a collective of a number of women contributors. We actually do video content. We do blog. We have a number of Twitch streams. So we're in a little bit of just about every social media space. And the unifying idea of what we're creating, in addition to entertaining the game industry and talking about games in general, is to normalize seeing women in game spaces and to make our community and our industry more diverse. The group is all backgrounds, all races, and we're really proud of that because it's important to us to show that gamers at the table are everyone. You know,
Absolutely.
your next door neighbor, everyone is a gamer at heart, and that's what we do.
Right. So the thing about these content creation groups and organizations and a lot of people in the industry is a lot of people do this as a passion of love, right? It's a hobby and all this kind of stuff, because I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, I'm not quite sure, have jobs and stuff like this. So how hard is it to keep the group together, to keep the content and all that kind of stuff when you may have different women have different responsibilities, you know what I mean, to create stuff?
I think that balance, I think content creators, like you said, all kind of are trying to find that balance in their lives. I do work on this and marketing for the industry full time. So I can dedicate a little bit more time than the other collaborators do. But the way we're structured at this time allows each of us to come in and work on the thing that we love. And then we can kind of overlap each other as well. So for example, we do 5 Twitch streams a week, but there are 6 of us. So a few co-hosts with others, some have solo shows. Kaylee Bray is big in the role-playing community, and she does our role-playing content pretty exclusively for us because that's what she's into. And so working on that as well is just, it comes naturally and it feels a little bit less job-like. For her. So everybody, if you read the blog or if you watch some of our video content, you'll notice that, everybody kind of has a little bit of a speciality, and allowing everybody to be able to work from their viewpoint. I feel like that makes it a little less like work and a little bit more like play.
Oh, okay. So it's interesting that you say you have different women who have sort of different disciplines, I guess, for lack of a better term, or different areas of expertise, I guess to say. So if you could maybe name a couple of those, and what is the most popular for the Girls Game Shelf?
Most popular thing that we cover, or
because you said you have somebody who's in the role-playing games. I don't know if you have say tabletop, the miniatures. If you have board games, you do CCG, that kind of thing.
It's interesting that you ask about the most popular, because we actually launched a collaborative series that we do not only just in our group, but with other women content creators in the industry and designers and folks who are working in geekery in general. And that is currently our most popular series. So it's not necessarily focused on one thing. The Bits and Bobs series that we do, the 3rd one comes out tomorrow, covers everything from cosplay makeup to board game design to the way people look at inspiration when they're creating content. And that has been very, very well received in the community, because it does, not only does it end up featuring a lot of really dynamic women in our space. Emma Larkins has been on, Monica Paprocki from Geeks A Go-Go. It's a little bit of everything for everyone. And I don't think I've ever met a gamer that didn't have other interests besides gaming. So it reaches out and touches those things too. It may be like a little bit of food and games or makeup and games. So that's been a lot of fun for us.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, it is good. You're absolutely right, because even though I myself am a dork or a nerd, for not being a dork or a nerd. And what I mean by that is I'm really heavy into board games. I don't know comics. I don't know superheroes or Star Trek, Star Wars. I don't know, video games, anything. I'm really, but I do like food and stuff like that. So we do all have different interests.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things you mentioned that you were marketing full time in the industry. So what is it that what is your full-time job?
So I work for Pencil First Games.
Okay.
So I do the social media and some of the marketing for Pencil First Games, and then the other bit I do is Girls Game Shelf and content creation. So
what is so what exactly is Pencil First Games? Like, what kind of company are they?
Well, Pencil First Games is a game publisher. They've done Herbaceous Sprouts, Sunset Over Water. Just recently, we had a Kickstarter for the Whatnot Cabinet, which is a new tile laying game that'll be out a little bit later this year. 100 Tory. We've got several games in the line now. So, and Edo, just in addition to doing Pencil First Games and releasing some really fantastic games, which, and I say that, yes, I am an employee, but before I worked for the company, I was actually a really huge fan of the games, and that's why I applied for the position. So, so I can say that. But Edo also does a video series called Gaming with Edo, where he reviews games and does work towards helping other folks in the industry. It's called League of Game Makers. So he does videos for folks that are going to Kickstarter and how to help them out, or folks that are getting into marketing, are very new in it. So it's kind of an interesting place to work, because we're not just doing the publishing of the games. Edo is also a content creator, so we can talk about that as well as talking about, like, the new products and stuff that we're doing.
Right. So how long have you been in the industry? Because, and this is sort of a two-part, because I want to dig into a little bit deeper. So I want to talk about how long you've been in the industry, and then I want to even go back maybe a little bit further and how long you've sort of been into gaming as a hobby. So first, how long have you been in the industry? Oops, there goes my mic. But and what I mean by that is, familiar going to conventions and networking and having your job and all that kind of stuff.
It's about 2 years now.
Okay.
I think so. I've been a part of Girls Game Shelf just maybe 18 months or so, and I had started writing with like Geeks of Go-Go before that. So it's been about 2 years, I think, and almost as long for being with Pencil First.
Okay, and then what is your life in gaming? How long have you been, or I should say, considered yourself a gamer, right? Because there is that leap. Because there are people like me, my whole life, I played games. Like whatever it was, I played games, but I didn't necessarily call myself a gamer. You know what I mean? Like
right.
That was part of my identity. So, or I should even maybe ask, are you a gamer? Have you crossed that line?
I was born a gamer. I emerged with a token and dice in my hand. No, I really do. I mean, some of the first things I can remember having and keeping as a child, my first game was Cluedo. And I carried that. We moved a lot when I was a kid because my father was military. That was the one thing that was always on my list to move. I mean, even to the exception of clothes and shoes and things, like my copies of my games were moving with us if we had a moving allowance. So, and really that continued on through. In college, I played a ton of Avalon Hill games. As a young parent, when it was harder to do gaming, I got into competitive video games and did that for a while. And then as modern hobby board gaming came into existence about 15 years ago for me, I was introduced to things like Ticket to Ride, and then we started building this wild collection. And one day I thought, I want to talk to other people about that too. So
yeah, I think a lot of us had the same kind of pathway into it. And then also, as far as you in particular, and again, because I ask this question a lot and people always say, oh, I love all games. And yes, we do. But if you if the earth was going to end in, 6 hours and you had to pick like, the exact type of game you would want to play. Maybe not a title. What is your favorite mechanic? Like, this is the last game I want to play before I go out. What is the kind of mechanic that you really, really like?
I don't know if I'd get, well, okay. So for me, mechanic, I love point salad games.
Okay.
Seven Wonders, things that you can switch up strategies, even mid-game, or from game to game, and play wildly different and still have a shot at winning. I think these are good because they appeal to a lot of people. I love heavy Euros, but I think that you have to think a certain way in order to be really into heavy Euros and good at them. Very analytical, very strategic. With point salad type games, maybe I'll use Seven Wonders as an example. Maybe you want to focus on art. Maybe, military is your bag and you want the conquesty bits, or maybe you see how the different things stack up. And so you want to build into chains or whatever. With point salad type games, it allows for a lot of different people that think a lot differently to have a shot. And so I think those games are appealing for game groups, for friend sets. And to me, that's one of the biggest and most important part of gaming is the social. So my mechanic ties into, so if I was going to be on a desert island, I guess I'd need a couple of other people with me.
It's funny how, like, when I asked that question, I don't know why it's sort of, like, people seem to have to feel politically correct or whatever to say, like, oh, I want people, I want friends. I mean, it seems like it's hard for people just to say, this is the kind of mechanic I love. This is what I love. You know what I mean? Like, it's weird. Like, I don't know. So how did the girls' game sell sharp? Because if I'm not mistaken, it was actually Christina, right? She started it, and then you came. So tell me about how it started, and then how you came into the picture.
So Christina Amoreto started Girls Game Shelf about 5 years ago. She is an actress and a video editor. And as she started moving into having her family, she's also a gamer and loves games. She was kind of looking for a project that she could do from home that she would still be able to be super creative in and kind of reach this community that she really liked. So she started the program. And if you've watched our early episodes, Girls Game Shelf is a number of women sitting around a table playing a game and then talking about it. And it's fantastic. And that's actually how we met. I had just started making baby steps into content creation. I saw the show and loved it. So I kind of shot my shot and I just sent her a blind email and I was like, hey, can I talk to you about games one day? And she was like, yeah, cool. So from that, we developed a friendship and we were both kind of hitting this, I don't necessarily want to say wall, but a little bit as one person. And especially if you manage a household and you have children, other responsibilities, other jobs, just other things going on in your life, there's only so much you can do on your own. And she had wanted to start moving into blogging. I had wanted to start moving into video. So we were kind of like, why don't we try this together? So we did, and the rest is history.
Oh, nice. No, it's absolutely fantastic. I mean, what you guys have done. And then you slowly started, you bring in people may, have other, things in life going on, coming and going. But who has been the core since sort of day one of the Girls Game Shelf?
Well, really Christina and then me. Recently, since Christina has left and some of what the channel is doing has been changing, right now, our main lineup is myself, Monique, Michelle, Kaylee, Benita, and Fortessa. And those are the ones that you see if you go to Facebook or Twitter and see our banner. Those are the 6 ladies who are working, and everybody works on the blog. Everybody does little bits of video and everybody streams, but kind of going back to what I was talking about earlier, like everybody does a little bit of what they want to. So Michelle likes to stream like really heavy competitive games. Her show is called Michelle Versus. And Monique loves the social aspect. So for Chaos Factor, she hosts large scale roll and writes so that tons of people can pile in and play with her. Fortessa and Benita host a show where designers come on and actually teach them how to play. And since Fortessa is now, I think, on her 3rd published game or about to be published game, it's really an interesting dynamic to watch her interact with designers, where Benita's purely coming from the player standpoint. So the design aspect is covered from two sides, both the really crunchy, bits that go into it, and the players, how is this fun for me kind of thing. So, and then Kaylee actually is a professional DM. So she has her show, Damsels, Dice, and Everything Nice, and then hosts some things for us as well. She'll be hosting, we'll be doing a Girls Game Shelf role-playing game at our upcoming convention, Shelfapalooza, in a couple of weeks.
Nice. Okay.
So, and she'll be our DM for that, and the rest of us will be players.
Wow, very nice. Yeah, no, that's really, really good. And I like the fact, like you said, about making it normal, right? For the visual, just to see that there are women who are active participants in all aspects of gaming. Because I'm trying to do the same thing with people of color, to see that it is normal and that we are represented in the industry in all different aspects and stuff like that. And what I want to know, maybe we can talk a little bit more about that, is, first of all, do you have any sort of metrics as far as the kind of audience you're reaching? And I want to know how you have been able to reach and what has been the feedback from perhaps, say, women in the industry or the board gaming community.
So our metrics usually come just from YouTube or the things that we've done, when you do a little bit of Google Analytics or Facebook, from Facebook ads and things. And we actually find that we're kind of split. And I think part of that, though, is just who's using social media for different things. So since, for example, at this time, we're producing like a lot of how-to content. The folks that are going to look for that aren't necessarily the folks who are going to look for collaboration videos or just kind of fun videos of people playing through games. So it's interesting to see that while our audience is split and does lean into more women, there are a lot of guys that watch the show and seem to get something out of what we're doing. So, and are absolutely welcome to. I think a little bit of that is also just because women aren't well represented in the industry anyhow, and don't necessarily feel comfortable on the internet sometimes in the gamer community. So it's a little harder to reach, find, and bring them in. But we're seeing, and we have been seeing over the past couple of years, that not only are they out there, they're very interested, and they're coming in droves, and they're checking things out. And we're really excited from the time when Kiki started things to right now, just the number of like women Facebook gamer groups or other women in the industry has just increased exponentially, and it's really fantastic to see.
No, it really is. And again, I can sort of mirror everything you're saying. The same aspect with, Black people of color. We're getting more visibility. There are more content creators. Again, it's becoming more normal that you do see that. However, I do want to bring something up you had mentioned about the comfort level, because I would like to talk about this, but I just want to make sure that people sometimes need to understand that, again, there's a lot of what they maybe call guilt and stuff like this. It's not necessarily other people's fault. And what I mean by that, I may be, say, the only Black person in a room or a group of 20 other people, and say they're all white. Mm-hmm. Now, I may feel uncomfortable, but it's not their fault, okay? Because they're not doing anything wrong. It's just because I'm the only one. And if it becomes more normal and then there's more diversity, then there may not be that discomfort. So I want you to talk about that a little bit. And if you agree with that, so the discomfort, is it necessarily because of just being the minority, as maybe the only women or not enough women? Or does the discomfort maybe come from the way that maybe there are actual things that happen? Do you know what I mean?
I think it's both. I think I cannot recall any conversation that I've had with a woman in this industry where everybody has a story of the time they went into a game store and got ignored, or the time they attempted to approach a table of people playing games and got talked down to. Unfortunately, it does happen, and it does put one's back up, because you get nervous and you do kind of try and build a wall so that you don't get nervous the next time. And that does mean that, unfortunately, the next group you go to could be absolutely welcoming, but because you've already had this experience, it's what you recall, it's what you know, right? So one thing that we talk a lot about, both with the Pathways Fellowship, which is a group that I'm working with in order to promote having more diverse creators in the industry, as well as with groups that I'm working with to do board game design contests and things, is making sure there is representation in the panel, the group. You know, when people see their own face or a face that is similar to theirs, they automatically feel more welcomed. And reaching out. It's not good enough to say, everybody's welcome at my table. You need to welcome them to your table. You need to reach out. If you see someone hovering at the edge of the game space, put your hand out and say, hey, interested in playing a game? Do you play games? Have you played this one? It's that simple. It really is. And then just making sure that your space, maybe, you know, create a small rule set that so that everybody in the space understands, you know, that this is a space that welcomes everyone. And make that clear, post it on the wall of the game space, whatever, and actively, I don't necessarily want to use the word call out, but I'm going to because it's the first one that comes to mind. If someone else at the table makes a slightly off-color joke or inadvertently says something that could be off-putting, say something. You don't have to be ugly about it, but just be like, hey man, like that might have not have been really cool. Rethink how you said that, you know, and that informs the other people at the table that type of behavior, joke, whatever is not welcome. And so you don't, because I think that's another thing that everybody's had as an experience, right? Is they show up to something happens, some interaction happens in front of them and they go, ooh, this group is not for me. So, right. So it's another part of that being welcoming is making sure that group is for anybody that you want to bring to your table all the time. So it becomes natural. You can't say, okay, when there's not ladies here, we're going to have, you know, the off-color ladies jokes. No, because then that happens while there's ladies here. You shouldn't welcome that to your table anyway.
No, absolutely. You're absolutely correct. However, AnnaMaria, one of the good things I think coming out of the Black Lives Matter movement, I mean, there are a lot of good things.
Yes.
There are a lot of good things. But in particular, because of the visual, and like you even heard people like John Lewis talk about it, how the overwhelming majority of people have been white people, like a lot of at these conventions and stuff like this. So the things that you're saying, the incidences that you're saying that may happen, it does get tiring upon me as a Black person to always have to be the one to say, hey, that's inappropriate, that's inappropriate. It would be nice if an ally, like another white person or something, said something to that person. And the same thing with a woman. If somebody says something inappropriate, it would be nice for somebody like me, a man, to say something to that person instead of it having to be tiring again on that person to always have to be the one to say something.
Absolutely.
So hopefully, whether it's male, female, or a racial aspect or gender, gay, not gay, all these different kind of groups, you know what I mean? It would be good if the person who isn't in that group, in other words, an ally, steps up and is the one to say things.
100%. You know, don't if you push the emotional burden off onto the person who is, the person who's kind of the subject of whatever it is, that's another way you're going to lose them because they're just going to get tired. You know, you get tired of being the one who says every time, maybe not, right? So yeah. So I'd rather just stay home and play games on my computer if I'm going to have to be everybody's little mom or finger wagger every time. It's not worth my time. So
that's true. No, it is very true. And there's something else because, again, it happens to me a lot too, right? You may go into a game store, you may be ignored. I go to conventions and a lot of times I go up to booths and I get ignored and things like this. But here's what I'd like to talk about, because again, I don't know if there's a fine line in the way you say how when people teach a game, they may get talked down to or whatever, because a lot of times we don't have a control. And what I mean by that is, could that person who's talking down to you just be a jerk? Like, do you not know that they may have talked to, like if it's a woman who feels that way, they may have talked to a man the same exact way because they're just a jerk. Or if I get ignored at a booth, is it not because I'm Black? Is it just because they're bad demo people? You know what I mean? So it's hard sometimes. We don't necessarily always have that control, but unfortunately, that is the way we feel when we do notice it from only one side of the equation, right?
Sure. I think there's a certain amount of burden though that we can put back on the original. Let's take the demoer as an example. If you have a few people start complaining that I got ignored at your booth, or you're noticing that folks are just walking away, they weren't engaged, you need to do something about it. You need to train your demoers better. If somebody is a jerk, in a situation. That person does not to be front facing in either your gaming group or your publishing house or wherever they were front facing, and and people came in contact with them. So yeah, I mean, there's always going to be situations. Somebody's having a bad day. Someone just didn't see you. There's always going to be situations where that kind of thing happens, and someone's going to get their feelings a little hurt, and it was entirely inadvertent. But I think if the industry has been talking a lot recently because of things like Black Lives Matter about how important it is to them to diversify our community, to make sure that people feel welcome at the table, then they need to do the work too. It's not good enough to just say, oh, we want people to come to our table. Make the table welcome, make the space, create a seat, put a cushion in it, open the door and say, hey, come play with us. So
you know what, AnnaMaria, I'm so glad you said that. And I'm glad you noticed that too, because I've been kind of noticing the same kind of thing. And the kind of phrase that I want to highlight here is putting in the work. And specifically, I just want to relate it to maybe something that I personally can relate to, because I own a board game cafe. Now, when I a lot of times put out a call for people to come work, or employees, or to hire people, I'll say get 49, say, white guys and one woman or something like that. Now the thing about it is, again, it's nobody's fault. It's not their fault, and it should be true. In the gaming industry, there are more white men. That's just a fact. That's just what it is. However, with these companies and me, if I want women, then I need to put in the work, and I need to actively go and hire them. I can't be lazy and sort of use the shield of the excuse, well, none applied. Or the same thing with minorities in companies. You can't just say, I put out 100 applications, I didn't get a woman, I didn't get a minority. Okay, that may be the fact, but put in the work. If you really mean it and you want to do it, you have to actively pursue it. So I'm really glad you pointed that out. And what are more of your thoughts about that? And how are some of the actions that you think the Girls Game Shelf may be representing to these companies and stuff to make them be a little bit more proactive?
Yeah, it's funny. I know I mentioned earlier just like being the face, seeing, but it's so important, and it's kind of easy to do. One of the game contests that I have judged for the last couple of years started adding more women judges to the panel, and immediately saw a increase in the number of women that were submitting designs. That's really all he did to change how the contest was marketed, where he was posting or anything. He just added more women to the panel of judges, and more women were like, oh, I feel comfortable sending something in now because I know that I am represented and I know that my face is welcome. So that is such an easy change that folks can do. Slight change in wording when you're looking for applicants or for folks to join. Make sure it says that, that minorities are encouraged, that women are welcome, that it's an LGBTQ friendly space. This type of language, it's very direct, but directness is needed in a lot of these cases. Trying to read between the lines and decide if maybe a space is good for you, or, will be friendly, will be safe, is hard to do. And if you've had bad experiences, you're probably just going to not chance the chance of being hurt or offended or anything. So putting in that work can be just as simple as make sure you've got a minority front facing, make sure that you've got language that is inclusive. That's it. That's all.
No, absolutely. Yeah, people need to be more proactive, definitely, when they're doing that. And then, so with the Girls Game Shelf, in the blurb, it said, like, bringing a feminine perspective. Now, and I know we've been both talking about this because I'm trying to highlight people of color, you're trying to highlight women and all this kind of stuff. But maybe can you explain or I'm trying to think, maybe extrapolate a little bit more, what maybe are some particular things that really differentiate a woman from a man, or a feminine perspective? Because I'm sure there are certain things that women, again, may feel more comfortable with playing with games or different kind of things. So are there certain things?
Well, the fun part is the feminine perspective is entirely just because it's women playing the game.
Okay.
The feminine perspective in this case is that our perspective when it comes to gaming kind of unites us all regardless of who we are and our backgrounds
Sure.
and things like that. So I think, especially when Christina got this started 5, 6 years ago, we were looking at, very gender divided things when it came, people would market certain games because they had butterflies and rainbows to women or young women. And they would market other games specifically to boys and men. We know that 20 years ago, that's how video game consoles became popular because suddenly it was a boy toy and specifically marketed that way. And we're still dealing with fallout from that because people still see video gaming as a largely male thing, even though more women are actually digital gamers. So with the feminine perspective in board games, what we were trying to kind of say with that is that if you watch the show and you watch us play, it's going to look like any group of gamers ever playing. There are some of us that are brutally cutthroat and will do anything to win. And some of us that are much more laid back and chill about gaming and just want to have a good time. But you could pick out and substitute, just anybody at that table and it's still the same. And I think it's important for folks everywhere to kind of see that there's no big difference there. It just happens to be a table full of ladies.
No, absolutely. And it's the same thing with people of color, that we are exactly the same when it comes to game. Like you said, we can be cutthroat, we can be whatever like type of gamer you are. We can be really nice. Some people can be real jerks. You know what I mean? Being a woman or a people of color or whatever doesn't exonerate you from any category, right?
It's true.
We all have the same different kind of attributes. But again, it's just, and I'm so glad you're doing this because again, it's just the normalization because in the industry, there just isn't a lot of front-facing, forward-facing things that are strictly people of color, strictly women. So when organizations, groups come along like the Girls Game Shelf, it does such a tremendous thing now to let it be more normal and people see it. So as they're scanning through YouTube, as they're scanning through whatever kind of media site, all of a sudden it's like, man, women. Oh, man, women. Oh, there's a little bit more, not as much as we could see, because there always could be more, but at least there's more and more getting in there.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why we've been changing up our programming in the last year or so. Since Kiki, originally the concept for the show was just gameplays. And as I came in, I started looking at things like BGG and how few games you could go to and find a how-to where a woman taught you a game. And so that's when I was like, okay, so why don't we start looking into doing more how to play videos while it's not, something necessarily that our fans at the time were hugely asking for. It just kind of furthered what our brand was founded on. And now when you go to BGG, and this isn't just us at this point, there's Stella from Meeple University, there's Ella. There are so many really cool dynamic women now that are making how to plays. And it's nice, say from early days of BGG, where if you went to go do a how-to video, you were going to be taught by a white dude. Now there's a lot more options for who you can watch to learn how to play a game. And that's another thing that's important directly to your point. Now we scroll through, and when you want to go and do a how to play for Seven Wonders, it's not just 17 pages of the same typeface. It's different faces.
Yep. And again, even it's spreading out into a lot of life. And again, as animals, right? If you just want to break us down as animals, yes, it's sort of like even in the animal world, the male sort of is the one, except in lions, right? Of course, it's the women who go out and do all the hunting and kill everything, right? But the man is sort of like, as a caveman, been the provider, the club, me hunt, get food, women are the nurturers, raising the family and stuff like this. But it's nice just to really start and I don't know why it's taken so long, but to get that good cross mixing to see that, no, hey, women can do this, men can do that. And it's still taking time, but it is becoming more and more normalized that we are both equal to do the same things. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
we still have ways to go, but it is becoming more and more normal. And it's not so unusual because, again, just today on Twitter, a friend of mine who's a doctor posted posted this thing about how to report inappropriate behavior or something, what it was. And he even pointed out how the chauvinistic, and it said, it said if, and then it said his attitude is this and that, he does this, and it's like, well, wait a second, what about all the women? Like like you said, the language too sort of excludes a whole part of society when they have this thing that it's just, oh, they're just male doctors. No, there's women doctors.
Rule books is a great example in our industry. And if you look at rule books for things that are 5, 6, 7 years old, the pronouns are almost always masculine. They just assume that the player is a male. And there's been a huge upsurge and shift in the industry as a whole to either switch to using both, or going with the gender neutral they instead, or just trying not to write in, using the player, which then alleviates all of that, right? It could literally be anybody reading that rule book at that point. It's a small change, but it's enough of a change that now when I go back to play old games and I pull out a rule book and it says he, I actually stop for a second and I go, maybe this isn't for me. Oh, wait, no, that's just how everybody said it then. And so it's tiny, but it makes other people feel included.
It does. And I'm so glad you brought that topic up because I'd like to talk about that a little bit. And again, I will admit, because again, we've all had to try to start listening more, doing work. And it's all out there for us to do, right? To become more aware of certain things. And I will admit, I was guilty of that when it came to like the he in rule books. And how I was guilty is it just never affected me because I'm a man. So I guess I was guilty by, I don't know, just ignorance or whatever, because I was like, what's the big deal? Because I don't even care what they say he, I don't care. But if that's just the way it's always been, of course it's not going to really affect me, right? I'm not going to notice until people start saying, hey, this bothers me, this affects me. Then I started realizing, I'm like, wow, yeah, if you always hear he all the time, then she almost in essence becomes a bad word, right? Or it's like, why do you never say she? Is there something wrong with she? How come everything's he? So I'm like, oh, maybe now I can start to understand where they're coming from, what they're saying.
Exactly. Yeah. I've been doing it recently with my own language. I'm a Jersey Shore Italian, so you guys is something that I used to use for the plural. And someone pointed out to me that that's a little exclusive. So I've gone back to, we lived in the South for a little while. So I'm using y'all right now as something as a stopgap until I figure out what I want my collective word to be. But
yeah, but again, but again, so it's funny, right? Because we can have this discussion all day, right? We can go back and forth, say things like this, right? Because, like you said about you guys, to me, to me, that's almost gender neutral, right? Mm-hmm. Sort of like dude, because because I know the younger gen, because I'm in my mid 50s, and I hear younger people. When I first heard people like Randy, what's his face, the guy on America's Got Talent, when he would call a woman a dude, I was like, what's wrong with you? What are you calling her a dude for? That's just weird, right? But it's sort of to the younger generation become gender neutral, right? The word dude. So to me, I'm sorry. I guess maybe maybe thanks for pointing out. Maybe I should relook that. But to me, guys is gender neutral, but it probably isn't, right?
Well, I mean, I think that's a regionality and a cultural thing, right? For me, growing up where I did, having family where I did, it felt like it was. But I had a couple of people point it out and say, to me, guy means male. It means a man. And so when you say you guys, that's who you're addressing. And and I don't want to intentionally make someone feel bad. And that's what it came down to. If I can change my language just a smidge, it doesn't affect anyone else that I'm talking to, but it made someone else feel better and feel included. That's important to me. So I'll use y'all.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And again, we all have our own different things we need to be aware of, we need to overcome, need to be cognizant of. But like you said, if a little thing you can do by just saying a different word can make somebody feel better, then why wouldn't you take that option, right?
Exactly.
because again, like for somebody like me, I'm really into Spanish. I studied it in school and all this kind of stuff. And it's just been so ingrained, like when I think about words, they have the masculine, feminine,
Right.
like in French too, but I'm always just with the conjugation, the he, the I, you, he, she, it, we, you, and they. So to me, he and she and they have always been distinctly different. There had to be a they, there had to be a he, she, you know what I mean? Because
Right.
so it's just like little things like that are a little bit harder for me to overcome because of how you have been individually trained.
Sure.
But as long as you now come to an awareness, which I think I am starting to, then we can start to move forward and maybe change some habits. And again, like you said, little things just to make people feel better.
Exactly.
So what are some of the big things that Girls Game Shelf are doing as far as your programming? Because I know you said you had different aspects. You had the Bits and Bobs new program, different things. So what are the, say, different parts that make up the entirety of Girls Game Shelf?
So I'll start with a blog, which is where I started and came into Girls Game Shelf. Via the blog, we do first looks for Kickstarters. We do a number of different reviews. And since everybody has a little bit different perspective in games that they like, we can actually review a lot of different things. So that's super fun for us. We also have a series that I write called the Busy Girls Guide. That's usually a listicle that covers everything from, games of a certain type of genre to like important things to bring to a convention. And when we were still going to conventions, or best foods for game nights. So the things that are on the blog range from just, really informative game driven pieces to lighter things that are game related, but not necessarily what's on the tabletop.
So sorry, is the blog strictly written? Like, is that strictly in one place?
The blog is strictly written.
Okay.
It's girlsgameshelf.com. And then our video actually links into, so if you go to the front page, you'll see the latest thing that's been written. Today, it's Kaylee's piece on miniatures,
Okay.
and our latest video. So, and then that'll shoot you over to our YouTube page, that's the next thing we do is we do videos. We do a lot of how-to work for different people in the industry. We also have a collaborative series that I talked about called Bits and Bobs. And those are not only the members of Girls Game Shelf, but other women creators in the industry. We do some list type things, top 10s, top 8s. We're working on a series on game schooling. I actually game schooled my kids for 20 odd years. So, and now that a number of people are being kind of pushed into homeschooling or having to do homeschool, I should say, we're trying to put more information out on how you can use games to actually educate your kids. So, and then the third thing that we do is we do Twitch streams. We Twitch stream 5 days a week. We've got a couple of programs where the ladies solo play story-driven video games. And then we've got Michelle's evening that is Michelle Versus, where she plays Heavy Euros with different folks. Right now it's mostly me, but we'll see who starts coming on the show as things progress. Fortessa and Benita host Teach Me How to Play, and then they have designers come on and publishers to teach the either newer games that they've published or older stuff they just want to talk about, because that show is half about the game and half about the actual designer or the publisher themselves. And then Monique hosts Chaos Factor, which is usually a big group, like a mega game. So there's a roll and write or something involved. The sheets go up and get printed, and you can play from home along with her. So there's live content, there's video content, there's written content. There may be more, something secret in the work for later. So.
Oh, really? Wow, that's exciting to know.
We're going to be everywhere.
Very, very good. So, again, we talked a little bit about doing the work and putting in the work and how the publishers and the manufacturers in the industry. So with that being said, have maybe the publishers, the industry or whatever, maybe start approaching you as maybe a consulting, or because if your goal is to say a feminine perspective and to sort of normalize women or femininity, I don't know which is correct term that would apply to this, but have you maybe been consulted or asked to consult about maybe any facets in the industry?
We've had folks approach us and ask about artwork, because that's a big thing that comes up. It's the first thing someone sees when they see your game on a shelf. And if your artwork is not approachable, it's just the same as looking a bunch of hunchbacks at a table, right? If I see something on a board game box that says that game's not for me, I'm not giving it another shot, right? So we go a lot back to the scantily clad woman warrior standing next to the dude who's completely in armor, right? Like, why don't I get armor? My stomach's not impervious. This is not magic area. Like, and it's a simple fix. Just having your artist put some armor on the lady makes a lady feel more inclined to go pick up your game. That's an easy one. I've also done some rule book consulting of just kind of going through and doing little pronoun checks, just things that make everyone feel included. So yeah, we have had some folks reach out to us and just to kind of give an eye when maybe they don't. But more and more publishers are also hiring more minorities, more women, more gay folk as well. So they already have people on staff who can, which is also great, because then they can do the work themselves. So
that is very, very, very true. And the thing you said about the scantily clad women, yeah, that's a big thing that, again, wasn't sort of, I want to say normal to me, because I don't read the comic books, or I don't even do video games or any of the kind of, things that would have those. I know exactly what they're talking about. You know what I mean? I mean, I've seen them, but it's just not a big part of my life. But as a person, I guess, who isn't aware of that, one of the phrases you may have heard in society, we've all heard, is that sex sells. So how do you think maybe like a publishing company, a manufacturing company or whatever, whether it is comics, because I think it's pretty big in comics, the way women are dressed, and maybe some video games, how, or what would you say to them? And again, I'm not asking you to speak for them, because of course you can't, but what are your thoughts about how they would balance, the sex sells, because they're a company to make money, as opposed to being offensive? You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a line there. And the first thing I usually say when we have these discussions online, whether or not it's someone who's posted a cover and then someone comes to the defense of it, it's like, why would you alienate 50% of your buyers? If half of the planet is women, but your cover alienates those women, that's just a terrible business decision. That doesn't have anything to do with how you feel about it personally. But further, you can still make things attractive. You can still make things sexy, there's a line between objectivity and sexy, and someone who is maybe dressed a certain way, but is also very powerful, is very inspiring, is different than someone who is obviously just a trinket to be put on a shelf and lusted after. And you can tell the difference in that in art and the way that the poses this is something we've talked about with the movie industry. When you see the Avengers and all the guys are all like heroically posed, right? And Black Widow is turned so you can see her butt and you can see her chest all at the same time. They don't pose the dudes like that. But why, right? Because she is just as powerful as the rest of the Avengers, and you can have her in a skin-tight bodysuit and look fantastic, and that's still very sexy. And she could still be posed and, guns out, right? So there's a line there, I think, between objectifying someone, which is wrong, and just making them look strong, powerful, and sexy, which will still sell your product.
No, absolutely. But again, so you talked about a thin line, and this is a discussion where, in essence, you sort of, the thin line, I guess, also in this conversation would be to say that women are a monolith, because like when you said about how, you're alienating 50% of your audience, that essentially is saying that all women don't approve of the scantily clad women and stuff, right? So there may be some women who do like that, so,
sure.
Right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm bisexual. I like to look at nice looking ladies. So, but once again, you come back to, are you looking at them as an object, or are you looking at them, as someone to admire, as someone? You don't do the same. You don't portray men the same way almost ever in popular culture, even though sometimes the way that men are portrayed is another type of male fantasy, right? What we call male fantasy, and sometimes female fantasy, is scantily clad ladies. Often male fantasy is also very buff dudes, because they want to be with the women and be like the men, right?
Yep.
So that's problematic too, because not all men have a six-pack and, really broad shoulders and flowing blonde hair or whatever. But if you as a man keep seeing that, it gets in your head that maybe that's what I should look like. And if I don't, that's something wrong with me. And as a woman, if I don't dress like that, is there something wrong with me? So it's once again that line. You can have sexy stuff, you can have sex, in your video game or in your role-playing game or whatever, but it's the way that you approach it. It's the way that you handle how it's played, making sure that if it is in a role-playing game, everything's consensual and all your players understand that may or may not be part of the scenario.
True, absolutely. However, then what is the definition of fantasy, right? Because if it is fantasy, that means it's inherently not to be normalized. Yes or no?
Expand on that a little bit. What do you mean by not to be normalized?
Well, for instance, like, again, I'm just going to make stuff up because I can't grab anything directly that I know what I'm talking about because I don't know. But I'm trying to think what I would know. Like maybe like Conan the Barbarian, I guess, say, or whatever. That's
sure.
The only thing I can think of. So you see, Arnold Schwarzenegger. So you see this big, muscular, buff guy, and then there may be a woman with, a big breast and like a tiny thing covering her nipple or whatever, but scantily clad, however you want to call it. And that's sort of fantasy. So, I mean, do we have to still hold to societal norms or something when it's not real? You know what I mean?
No, I think there's room for things like the old Boris Vallejo type Conan covers, right? Which is exactly what you're discovering.
Oh, is it? Okay.
That's the one of the artists back in the 70s who did a lot of those things where Conan has impossible muscles that aren't actually existing on a real body.
Right.
I think the trouble is a lot of times our culture doesn't always, the line between fantasy and reality gets blurred. That's why when you look at magazines and you go through pages and pages of people who've been photoshopped impossibly, and then we have folks, or kids and young people who end up with terrible body image because this is unattainable. I think that we need to be clear when we have products like that this is fantasy. That's why with role-playing games, for example, that having a form that says this is what to expect in these games. These are the things that that you may experience. If you don't want to tell us now, let's talk about these things. Mm-hmm. If you have everyone go in with a clear set of expectations, with foreknowledge of what's going on, with an understanding of what the product is and the idea of the end product being ridiculous, over the top, Conan type fantasy, you're fine. It's when everything gets modeled after that. There was a game that came out recently where there was a skeleton and the lady skeleton had breasts. You can't have breasts if you're just breasts. Like
that's yeah, that's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, and so it's those kind of strange things that end up permeating the consciousness, right? So just be careful and be open and talk about those things. I think that's a really interesting way that having internet culture with design in mind now is really helpful, because if you're working on something, you're like, I don't know if this is right. I don't know if the cultural perspective is right. I don't know, since I'm not a woman or a man, I can't get into the head of a character or whatever. I need the gay perspective on this. You can go to there are so many people on Board Game Geek and Facebook groups or whatever. And if you post a picture and say, what do you all think of this? You're going to get opinions, and people will let you know. So it's not like 50 years ago when folks designed in their basement and then put things out. And then sometimes the public would just say, well, I don't want to buy that. There are ample opportunities now to get that feedback during the process and make sure that everybody, that you're not like actively doing something wrong against a group of folks.
No, that's absolutely true. However, on the other hand, I guess, which is a sort of like a thin line argument or discussion, is if your audience is that, like, say with whoever that comic guy you said, that series with the Conan, the artist.
Oh, Boris Vallejo.
Okay, so say Boris Vallejo, he knows that's his audience, then there's nothing wrong for him to continue doing that. And then people who object to it necessarily just don't have to buy it, right? So there is still room for people to do the things that they may have an audience for. And there's other room for people who just don't want to purchase it or support it to just not to do that either, correct?
I think so. I think you need to look at most everything you do as first do no harm. I think if you produce a product that may be somewhat polarizing, there is a certain amount of onus on you to make sure that we see rabid fan bases all the time in geekery. And people who get nasty, Star Wars fans who chase Kelly Marie Tran off of social media because they were so horrific to that woman.
Oh, so, I'm sorry. I say that one more time because I don't what you're talking about.
So Star Wars has an Asian character in it. The new Star Wars did, and some Star Wars fans were sent death threats and things to her so badly that she got off of all social media. You can't find her anywhere now.
Why?
Because they didn't like her character.
Because she was Asian?
Yes.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I didn't know anything about that. Okay.
Yeah. So you have, as a creator of Star Wars, and Disney's been quite good about this, though, and that's why I brought them up, saying this is not right. You know, this thing that I have produced is fantasy, and y'all need to be kinder to the folks that are participating. You need to not use this as a way to attack people, you know. So I would encourage, I mean, Dolores Vallejo passed away several years ago, but if you drew comics like that and then realized some of your fan base was being like, oh, all women should dress this way, you know, you send out a Twitter message and you go, no, this is fantasy. And all women get to dress like they want to. So
no, it is true. And I can tell you, again, I just don't do movies and all that kind of stuff. However, I have been seeing this ad for David Copperfield, a new movie on TV.
Doesn't that look great?
And here's the thing. All growing up, you know, of course, reading the book you had to in whatever 8th grade or whatever it was, reading the book and, you know, other movies and stuff, how they used to make them back in the 50s, these big old grand movies about, you know, the Renaissance or whatever period you call it in England, all that kind of stuff. You would just normally assume that at that period, at that time in England, you know, everybody was white. And it may be true that 99.9% of the people were white. However, again, when you see people that look like you are more interested and more apt to watch something. And just your reaction, like you just said, you said, wow, doesn't that look great? I was like the same thing. I was like, wow, that looks pretty cool because like there's an Asian guy. Oh, there's a black woman. Oh, there's an Indian guy. I mean, I was like, wow, the diversity is just so nice because there's different type of people. So it was more appealing to me just for strictly the visual. It looked really cool, you know? So it kind of brings us back full circle to what you're hoping to accomplish. Not hoping to, I should say you are successfully doing it. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
What you are accomplishing with the Girls Game Shelf is to normalize, make the visual that people are seeing more women who, as you said, are alpha gamers, who are cutthroat, who write, who do videos, but anything that is done in the gaming industry, which for years has been dominated by men. We also see, there are women who own publishing companies, who are heads of this, CEO, whatever, marketing director, blah, blah, blah. So it's really, really good just to see that all of this is becoming more normalized. And we do need faces like the Girls Game Shelf out there to constantly remind us of this and to keep putting together such great people who are really, really good. I don't know. I don't want to say like spokesperson or whatever, but you know what I mean? You're putting like just really good people out there, like, you know, to talk about these things. Like you said, the role playing a person, the other type of person. These are, you know, it's just really good. So keep up the good work.
Thank you. We're enjoying doing it, and we'll do it as long as we like it. So
yes. And one last thing before I want to go, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Pathways Fellowship. So you have this new program that you're a part of, and I just want to make sure if we could bring that up and talk about that a little bit. Okay.
Yeah. So this is something that I'm part of with several folks. Ben Beagle from NunPub, Omari Akil from Board Game Brothers, Fortessa Elise, who is one of our writers and an established designer, Catherine Croft. There's a lot of people involved, actually. And so Ben had the idea that we talked about at some conventions last year to put together a program that helped folks that want to get into the industry that were struggling with it. Elizabeth Hargrave has talked a couple of times about the number of women who've approached her about being a designer, but can't because they don't have the time, because a lot of women are responsible not just for their jobs, but for their households as well. We've talked to a number of designers. Omari's been very open about how, as a minority, how difficult having doors opened for him had been, and just finding space for him as a designer, as a Black designer. So we kind of came together to, originally we're going to be doing scholarships to conventions. Now we're changing that a little bit, but in order to help folks that have aspirations, that want to be part of the industry with what they need. Sometimes it's as easy as, they just need a laptop to be able to design something on Tabletop Simulator so that they can either play test it or bring it to the public. Sometimes it's more complicated with matching folks up with mentors that have already been through certain steps, either prototyping or play testing or any number of things in design. And so the fellowship is designed to help find those folks they can apply, and get them the help that they need to get on this path, because it's a brilliant industry. But if we're not reaching out to everyone, to folks who live in small towns that don't have board game stores, so they don't have connections to people who do games or anything else, it's a little help into the industry from that angle. And it's a really, really cool initiative. And I'm super proud to be part of it, because I think there's going to be some really cool things that come of it. Fantastic.
That's really, really good. I had put the banner up there.
Thank you.
You can see the link, so go ahead and support that. And last but not least, before we go, AnnaMaria, if you could, I would just like you to let everybody know where and how they can get to and see everything Girls Game Shelf in the internet, on the world, the interwebs, whatever you want to call it. Just go ahead and let everybody know how they can see more of you.
So the base website is girlsgameshelf.com, and you can kind of filter out from there. But we're on Twitter as Girls Game Shelf, Instagram as Girls Game Shelf, Facebook as, you guessed it, Girls Game Shelf. We do have a Patreon as well, and a lot of the support helps us make the content that we do. So, and that is also Girls Game Shelf. We kept it really simple so everyone can find us. So I think the only thing we haven't started yet is a Discord, but even our Twitch channel is Girls Game Shelf. So if you type it in, you're probably going to come to us.
Fantastic. Well, there you go, folks. We had a fantastic talk with AnnaMaria, the editor-in-chief of the Girls Game Shelf. And thank you so much for doing that and bringing that out there and getting women more to the forefront in the gaming industry. It's a fantastic thing. So don't go anywhere, AnnaMaria. I'll be right back with you.
All right.
Well, folks, thanks again for joining us for another episode of Meepleville Meets. We had AnnaMaria from Girls Game Shelf. So please go ahead and check them out and see all of the great content they're putting out in the board gaming industry, for board games, about everything gaming with a woman's perspective. It's absolutely fantastic. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you again soon.